Habibi, we have arrived in Dubai. Queridos, queridas, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. We are finally here in the city, the green city of Oz, in this formidable capital of this part of the world. Can't wait to share a number of videos on this place. But first, this is Latina Literati. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos, bienvenidas, bienvenidos. What we know as the United Arab Emirates is an ancient land. We know from artifacts that at least for 125,000 years, human settlements have flourished here, with the oasis on the land and with the richnesses, the vast richness of the oceans. People have been able to live here for so many millennia. The first time that this area is mentioned that has come down to us in written history is through the Sumerians. The Sumerians call this area Magran, and it is considered an area crucial to trade because you have trade routes that are going all the way to China and they're going all the way to the Mediterranean on the other side. And this area, because of its positioning, is crucial, is central to those trade routes. And we'll see how that plays out throughout history. So the ancient Sumerians recognized the rulers of this area. And of course, it was considered part of the ancient Persian Empire. Vast amount of land held under the Persian throne. And then, of course, you have it going back and forth between the relatively close Egyptian Ptolemaic empires, and in the 7th century this area accepts Islam, so it will become part of the Islamic Empire. Also a vast area of land from India all the way to Portugal. Vast area, huge amount of trade, and everything is done in relative tranquility and safety because you are under one government. You are under the governing Islamic sultanates, the emirs that ensure that trade is going on all over the empire. But eventually, the Portuguese arrive. And a man by the name of Alfonso de Albuquerque comes in and says, we actually don't want you to have safe trade routes. We want to take over that monopoly. So he destroys forts, destroys cities, and says, we're taking over the trade. Remember, you have the Portuguese, the Venetians, you have lots of Westerners that want this trade route. And so they start to battle the different areas where before the Islamic Empire ensured that trade could occur relatively safely. With the coming of the British Empire in India, all of a sudden, England purports that this whole area is under their influence. And so you have British outposts everywhere, and in fact, the most modern of the names before the current names are called, this whole area was called the Trucial States, from the truces that the British had secured from all of the people that lived along this coast to not attack British ships. And so it was called the Place of Truces, the Trucial States, until it was also called then the different Emirates. You have the Sultanate of Oman also as part playing in this, because this area was considered under the Islamic Empire part of the Sultanate of Oman. And Hormuz, which is the strait that connects this whole sea with the much larger oceans, is crucial even today for so many trade and defense purposes. It's considered central to the area and whosever interest happens to be at hand. Everyone knows about the Taj Mahal, but there was a king who so loved his queen that he built a mausoleum for her here along this coast. It is called the Mausoleum of Bibi Mariam, a beloved queen whose husband loved her so much that with the vicissitudes of time and sand and everything that can happen to buildings, it still stands today as a testament to love. In fact, it is said that chivalric love, that the poetry, the romantic poetry that today we can enjoy, originally came from this area. It is said that the first romantic or chivalric poem, which we call Chanson de Roland, or Roland's Song, is literally an exchange after there has been much influence from Andalusia with the French. So it's quite interesting how that which is happening in the westernmost part of the Islamic Empire, where you have the huge libraries and translators in Granada and other places, will literally lead to the Renaissance, because it is in those libraries that works of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans and the ancient even Persians everywhere, all sorts of works are kept and translated into Latin. Fascinating that you have things that come from as far away as this absolutely having a definitive impact on the West. Unacknowledged, I would say. Absolutely unacknowledged. And so it's important to take a look at the cadence, the rhythm of poetry, and understand where it comes from. With the arrival of outsiders, of course, the traditional ways of life of the Bedouin, the nomads, farmers, the traders, the fishermen, and even the pearl harvesters, the pearl divers, is going to come to an end. There is an absolute crash with modernity, and that begins when Japan starts its cultured pearl trade, just doing away with those who would in the past only buy pearls from this area. It was very well known, 17th, 18th century, as the place to get pearls. But of course, when you have the cultured pearl industry, where they place a grain of sand in the shell, and then the tears of the oyster, because that's what pearls are, the lacquer, the tears, forms the pearl as a way to protect the animal inside. It's pretty amazing. You just do away with this industry. Fascinating that as that is happening in Japan, you have other areas of the Arabian Gulf literally gushing with a newfound wealth, and that is, of course, oil. So oil is not found here until 1962, and it is in the 1970s and 71 when 6 of the Emirates come together, and the last one in February of 1972 comes together to form the United Arab Emirates. And so it is in Abu Dhabi where oil is found, and as that starts gushing out, literally, and the United Arab Emirates forms part of the group of OPEC nations. Quite interesting that from the beginning the rulers were really clear. They wanted to ensure that their people had a better standard of living. And so you see from the very beginning the investment in roads and in schools and in hospitals, just education. You just see that that is going to be a focus for the rulers, because it is well understood that a good ruler thinks first of his people, and that's definitely the case in these years after oil. And we'll talk much more about the modernity here, but I wanted to give you a little bit of the backdrop of where we are, the ancient lands that we're in, and of course a little bit of the history. And now on to my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. The first book I'm going to recommend is Rick Krane's book, Dubai, the fastest growing city in history. And of course that gives you a little bit of background and also sets the stage for the upcoming series. So as I mentioned, there'll be a number of videos that we make on this, a city that is growing even before us. There are cranes everywhere, but again, I'll get into more of that when we speak of those things. But I wanted to give you a backdrop and also the history and some books if this is of interest to you. The second book I wanted to recommend is called Hello Dubai, and it talks about skiing and the sand and shopping in the world's weirdest city. Although I wouldn't call the city weird, I would definitely call it unique. But this book also really delves into the detail of what Dubai has been like for its life, for its 50 odd years of life. Amazing. to look at and to be here and experience it. The people here so far have been incredibly generous, incredibly polite and welcoming, and it's been wonderful to be here. So as always, we want to hear from you. What are you thinking? What do you think about Dubai? Have you been here? Do you have good books set in Dubai or about Dubai? We would love to hear from you. We would love you to subscribe to Latina Literati. We would love you to tell us what you're reading and what your thoughts are. And as always, we continue to look for topics, and if there's something you'd like us to talk about, we would love to hear that as well. Thank you so much for joining us on this joint journey, and it truly is a joint journey. Thank you, gracias, and as I say here, shukran. Con mucho cariño, mucho salud, mucho amor, gracias.